Hi, I'm Randy Packard, a professor in the history of medicine at Johns Hopkins University, and I want to welcome you to this course on the social and cultural history of disease. I'm recording this video from my home in Atlanta, Georgia, rather than at the Institute of the History of Medicine, where I would normally be teaching. But we all know these are not normal times. We are in the midst of a global pandemic, which has disrupted all of our lives while killing hundreds of thousands of people worldwide and causing a global economic depression. The present pandemic provides a context for thinking about the history of disease and exploring a number of questions. What is a disease? How have understandings of what constitutes a disease changed over time and space? How have people experienced and responded to diseases in the past? And what do their responses to disease tell us about the societies in which they lived and the worldviews or understandings of disease they shared, or as in our current situation, fought over? How do we write the history of disease? What sources and methods do we use? These are some of the questions we will examine in this course. I have taught courses on the history of disease for most of my academic career, including a graduate seminar called Controlling Epidemics. But like most of you, I have seldom experienced a pandemic like this one. HIV/AIDS, which began in the 1980s, was a pandemic, but for many people, its progress was slow and stretched over decades. For gay men in San Francisco or New York, or Africans in Uganda or South Africa, however, the AIDS pandemic was much more intense and deadly. It felt more like our current pandemic. How you experience a pandemic depends very much on who you are and where you live. All of you living through this pandemic have had your lives shaped by it. It will be difficult to think about the history of disease outside of this experience. This is not a bad thing. Bringing your experience with the pandemic to our discussions of the history of disease can be productive and inform our collective learning about the history of disease. At the same time, we must try to step back from our experiences in order to understand how diseases were viewed and experienced by people living in different times and places. While there will undoubtedly be many ways in which these earlier histories resonate with our current experiences, we must avoid assuming that our views of disease and our disease experiences are universal. We must work instead to appreciate how people's understanding and experiences with disease were shaped by the world in which they lived. We need to take seriously the disease categories and etiologies of earlier times and not try to view them through the lens of current biomedical knowledge and disease experience. This image, for example, reflects an earlier view of the body, health, and disease, a physiological view in which an individual's health was believed to be shaped by changes in the balance of four bodily humors. It was a view which, in one way or another, influenced medical practice in the United States and Europe through the end of the 19th century. Throughout the course, emphasis will be on how people sought to comprehend disease in the past, how they responded to diseases and to efforts to control them, what resources they mobilized to make such meanings and responses, and the prevailing cultural, scientific norms that condition their thinking. We will also investigate how studying disease control and therapeutics in multiple contexts casts a critical light on the functioning of societies and governments. We will examine how formulations of disease have shaped notions of gender, class, race, and childhood, and vice versa. These image of an anti-syphilis poster from the 1940s, and of a white doctor taking blood from a black farmer in Alabama as part of the infamous Tuskegee syphilis experiment, are powerful reflections of how disease control efforts can shape, and were shaped by, ideas about gender, sex, and race. In this course, we will also examine a variety of approaches to the history of disease, how they are constructed, the sources they use, and the contribution each approach makes to the history of disease in society. As these 6 books about the 1918 influenza pandemic indicate, there are multiple ways to approach the history of disease. Each week we will examine a different disease. Some of these diseases, like malaria, diabetes, various forms of sexually transmitted infection, and influenza, will be familiar to you. Some, like green sickness, Wenbing, and breakbone fever, probably not so much. Each topic will be introduced by a lecture and assigned weekly readings, which are available online through our Course Plus website. Each week we will hold discussions based on those readings in the lecture, either through synchronous live talks on Zoom or asynchronous week-long voice threads. We will also have weekly office hours on Zoom. They are opportunities for you to chat further with us about the course and ask questions about issues we have discussed each week. Finally, I'm happy to note that one of our advanced graduate students, Kristen Brigg, will be joining me in teaching this course. We look forward to exploring the history of disease with you and to meeting you online.